Okay, Tyra.
So I knew that me being on that cover meant a lot more than just a bigger modeling career.
Hey, Tyra, can you start your right? Tyra, can you start your right, please? Thank you.
Hello everyone, tonight here on Viral, I'm your host as always, Kendrick Dix, but tonight on Viral, one of the biggest names in television is taking on the biggest names in streaming. Supermodel, entrepreneur, and former America's Next Top Model host Tyra Banks is suing Netflix over a documentary she said twisted her words, damaged her reputation, but is this the case of unfair editing, or is Tyra facing criticism over a show that has been controversial for years? Here's what you need to know. But first thing first, join in the conversation using the hashtag ViralHillConnect. Don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe is caring. Tell a friend. Call a friend. Hit that subscribe button so you won't miss a thing. Tyra Banks has filed a lawsuit against Netflix over its documentary examining the legacy of America's Next Top Model. According to the lawsuit, Banks says she participated in an extensive interview, but only a small portion of her comments were made the final cut. She claims the documentary selectively edited her response to create a misleading narrative and particularly sounding allegations around the treatment of contestants during the show run. Banks argued that the documentary was unfair. She suggested she knew about and ignored the serious issues behind the scenes. Her legal team said that's not simply true, that the editing harmed her personality and professionally. Netflix has not publicly addressed the allegations in detail, and the case is still expected to move through the legal process in the coming months. The lawsuit also reunites a larger conversation about reality TV. America's Next Top Model was one of the most successful reality competitions in its era, but in recent years, clips from the show have been gone viral for controversial makeovers, tough criticism, and challenges many viewers now see differently. Let's hear what you people had to say here on What the People Say.
Tyra Banks is suing Netflix, and the lawsuit raises a question a lot of people don't think about. Can a documentary get sued for how it edits you? Tyra Banks just filed a lawsuit against Netflix over its America's Next Top Model documentary. According to the lawsuit, Tyra says that she sat for a 3.5-hour interview, but only about 16 minutes made it into the final documentary, which is how it goes a lot of times. She claims those clips were edited and rearranged in a way that made it look like she supported or ignored misconduct on the show. One of the biggest allegations is that the documentary suggested that she knowingly allowed a contestant to be sexually assaulted. Tyra says that's false. According to the lawsuit, she claims that she had no knowledge of the alleged assault at the time, and that the documentary left out portions of her interview where she took accountability for things she actually was responsible for. So now here's where this gets interesting legally. It's generally not defamatory to report facts or criticize someone, but if editing changes the meaning of what someone said so dramatically that it creates a false impression, that's where lawsuits start happening. Netflix hasn't responded in court yet, so we'll see how this plays out. But this case could come down to one question: did the documentary tell a story, or did the editing create a false one?
Church, Netflix has made it on top of Tyra Banks' list of people to sue because she has just filed a defamation lawsuit against the streaming giant. In case you missed it, Netflix's reality check inside America's Next Top Model docuseries didn't quite show Tyra in the best light. According to her, they only used 16 minutes out of her over 3-hour sit down with them to paint a false and defamatory narrative. She says that they used her images in the cover art for the promotion of the docuseries, which gave people the false impression that she was endorsing the docuseries, okay? She also claims that she only received the final edit of the docuseries one day before it was set to premiere on Netflix. Now, Tyra girl, I have some thoughts. Number one, for all of y'all that had lives and couldn't keep up, in order to be on TV, you have to at minimum sign a release, okay? And that release should specify, the parameters of the docuseries, what they can ask you and what they can't. your rights regarding what you say. And for a seasoned TV veteran like you, Tyra, I'm surprised you didn't have some sort of stipulation as to, you know, you had a veto power regarding the final edit of your portion of it, okay? So to me, this sounds less like Netflix going rogue and more so that somebody on your team dropped the ball regarding your contract, okay? And number two, and I'm going to have to hold your hand through the screen when I say this, okay? Tyra, Ty, you know you shorten someone's name when you're trying to break bad news. Ty, your character was already defamed way prior to that Netflix docu-series, mama, okay? All them people did was bring back up what you did and put it in the forefront of their minds. Allegedly. Girl, don't sue me. I ain't got nothing. Now, y'all drop down in the comments and let me know what you think about this shit. And we'll talk later.
Tyra Banks is suing Netflix and others for the America's Next Top Model documentary reality check. And she's suing Netflix and some of the executive producers, and some of the things that she's alleging is that they edited it deceptively and they deceived her. They fabricated the essay. She's alleging they fabricated the essay narrative for Shandy. She's saying that they did falsehoods, like claiming that she just chose not to visit Jay Alexander when he had a stroke. And yeah, basically those are the biggest claims. And so she is suing for false light, defamation by implication, breach of contract, and false endorsement under the Lanham Act. So one of the things she says is that she sat for 3.5-hour interview and they only used 16 minutes of it. And she's saying that they intentionally reassembled and stripped her answers out of context to construct a false defamatory narrative, and that the other former judges had editorial influence, and she was told that they were only going to be interviewed, so she did not know that they were being consulted to construct a narrative. The biggest one being the whole Shandy episode, and I'll talk about that one in the next video.
So Tyra Banks has filed a lawsuit against Netflix about the documentary on America's Next Top Model, where she's claiming that they only used 16 minutes of her 3.5-hour interview with Netflix. Now, there was a lot of bombshells that were dropped during the interview and during the 3 episodes of the documentary. She's also alleging that they did not speak to her about the incident that happened with Shandy prior to the interview, and she didn't really know that she was going to be answering those questions. And also she's saying that her responses to those questions were altered in some kind of way that's defaming her. Now, it's kind of difficult for me to think that she's being defamed from words that actually came out of her mouth. So I went back and watched the documentary again, and specifically Netflix left in the producers asking her questions. So you can hear the producers in the background talking and then her answering the questions to that. And I think that Netflix did that because they knew that she would probably come back and say something like this or file a lawsuit like this. She's also alleging that the interview that they aired was stripped of context, and that is actually painting a defamatory look to her thoughts of what happened on America's Next Top Model. So a lot of people said that she lacked accountability within the documentary, and she's kind of doubling down on that. Like, listen, y'all not going to tell me what I said, even if I said it. You know, she wants everybody to understand her point of view, but she also doesn't like that they made it seem like she was saying things or agreeing to things that she actually said and agreed to. So when Tyra signed up for this documentary to talk, she actually thought that Netflix was going to create a documentary of the legacy of the show, you know, the successes and also the shortcomings. But, you know, the documentary really only talked about the shortcomings of the show. I don't think that they talked about one single success of the show. Like, they didn't showcase like, oh, this person, you know, was on the show and now they're you know, a huge model, or they do this, they do that. They was focus in on a lot of the negative. In fact, all of the negative things that happened within the show. So do y'all think that Netflix edited the footage to make it seem more negative than it was?
I think they were very fair to her. When you watch it, they start off talking about the fact that she had this idea and she went to several different networks and everybody said no except for UPN, and that she championed this space and she really championed plus size models. Like, they talked about all the positive things that she did. So it wasn't like a case of them just kind of doing this docuseries to tear her down. I think what the problem was is everybody on that show made mistakes. It's easy to look back on a show that was on 20 years ago and criticize it, and everybody owned their mistakes because there were some horrific people. Janice Dickinson was very mean-spirited and very sizes to a lot of women. Jay Alexander, Jay Manuel, they all owned it. And I think the problem with this docuseries is that Tyra made mistakes, and instead of owning it, she was one side of her mouth, she was saying, I'm the executive producer, this is my show, I'm the founder. And then when there was a mistake that she could have owned, she was like, oh, but I'm just a host, and that's more of a production thing.
Evading responsibility?
She did not fall on the sword and say, you know what, I got it wrong, I shouldn't have done that. Also, one of her castmates, Jay Alexander, he had a stroke, and everybody talked about the fact that they visited him in hospital. And then when they asked, has Tyra even called or come to see you? He said, no. And I think that is what got people in their heart kind of going, well, Tyra, you actually are a horrible person. So if she had owned up and if she was more of a friend, I don't think she would have received the backlash. So now I think, like, lawsuit or no lawsuit, people see who you are and they don't like it. So I don't think she can change that.
So Netflix is in hot soup with Tyra Banks. You remember there was a time when Tyra Banks, she's a Ugandan, right? Tyra Banks here, the owner wagon, the America's Next Top Model.
Tyra Banks, why you get oh no, I'm
pretty Banks.
Made tegeza Miss Banks.
See, pretty. So Tyra Banks, Tyra Banks.
Oh, yeah, from Japan.
But the black American girl. Yeah. So she's suing Netflix for twisting her story. Remember, like when she hosted America's Next Top Model, it came with a lot of things, a lot of trial moments, a lot of people going in depression because of the show.
Yeah.
So she thought,
you even talked about it, about the models who used to be part of it.
Yes, the sexual harassment and all that. So when she, like after growing up, you look at certain things and you want to clear out things. So she thought doing a docuseries with Netflix would be better for her to clear out everything and then take accountability for everything that she did on the show. Tell me how. So allegedly the Netflix editors sat down with her. They did a 3.5 hours interview, and they only chose to showcase 16 minutes from her interview. So meaning they twisted her interview, they painted her as
differently.
Yes,
from what she talked about in the interview.
I think she actually has a right to come out, not to complain about the minutes she was given, but she has a right to complain about the story, how the story was twisted.
Yes,
because everybody will tell you, I'm giving you 16 minutes, this is my platform, you have no right to complain about anything. But the only right you have to complain is the right to complain about twisting your story.
You know, that someone is going to record you right? And as a to put a certain story out there, because that's what they see will get them views.
People are against the Michael Jackson's documentary now. The biopic you better acted. Neither the documentary Netflix the fans of Michael Jackson are against it. They're like, yo, we are tired of everything that was against Michael Jackson. Let him rest.
Energy Radio.
Tyra Banks is suing Netflix over the viral America's Next Top Model documentary. Here's everything you need to know. Tyra Banks has officially filed a lawsuit against Netflix over her portrayal in the docuseries Reality Check Inside America's Next Top Model. The lawsuit claims that Tyra Banks' portrayal in the documentary is defamatory and was edited to support a false narrative. She claims that Netflix used just 60 minutes from her over 3-hour interview and edited it intentionally to make her look bad. One key moment in the documentary in question is regarding Shandy Sullivan, who during the documentary alleges that she was essayed while on camera as a contestant on America's Next Top Model. In the documentary, when Tyra was first asked about Shandy's story, it appears that she doesn't remember it. But the lawsuit claims that when Tyra was asked about Shandy, she immediately nodded and said, I do remember her story. That the edit falsely represented her and used a clip that made it seem like she couldn't remember. The lawsuit also argued that the accountability that Tyra took for some of the show's shortcomings ended up on the cutting room floor. Let me know what you guys think about this lawsuit, and this is definitely not the end of the story, so make sure to follow for updates.
Tyra Banks. Defamation and the lawsuit. We have it right here in black and white. Let's get into it. Tyra Banks, this former supermodel right here, is suing Netflix. She filed a 65-page complaint today, and she alleges a number of things. That Netflix put out this show, Reality Check, inside of America's Next Top Model. And what Tyra says is, Netflix put me in a false light. They told me that they were going to do a documentary on that great show, and instead they did a hit piece and misrepresented how I acted on that show in a specific instance that occurred on that show involving a former contestant, Sean D. Sullivan. But with regard to Sean D. Sullivan, back in 2004, there was an episode involving Shondi. This is what's been reported. Shondi had a boyfriend, and she was having problems with her boyfriend. So one night, when she's about ready to go out in Milan, she says the following: "I'm here. I'm going to have a good time, and I don't care." So that's something that she says to her boyfriend when she's in Milan. That night, she goes out. She gets drunk. Drinky, drinky, drinky. She starts hanging out with some local Italian guys, drinking, having a good time. Ultimately, on film, she's seen making out with this guy. Allegedly, later, she tells the crew that she had sex with him. The next day on the show, Tyra's there. There's a discussion about cheating. And one of the things that Tyra says to Shondi is, "Everybody messes up. I don't judge you." Tyra's saying, hey man, that incident that happened over 20 years ago, it was never framed as an essay. It was about a cheating thing. Now we're 20 years later and we're acting like she was essayed. Well, Shondi says, well, I was really intoxicated that night. I blacked out. I didn't even know anything. My interactions with that guy, I was too intoxicated to consent. Tyra, she capitalized on this. Tyra's like, what are you talking about? It's just now that you're trying to say that you were essayed. Back then that you cheated on your boyfriend. And why are you putting me in this false light? And then what Tyra claims is that on this Netflix show, they did a little cut on her. They asked her about Shondi and made it appear as if she didn't remember the person. And that's how they made it look like it's like she knew about it, she covered it up, and then tried to act like she didn't even know who Shondi was. Tyra says, none of that's true, and you're going to get sued because you put me in a false light.
This is the moment in the documentary of America's Next Top Model on Netflix that Tyra Banks is suing over.
On top of me, I was blacked out. No one did anything to stop it. And it all got filmed, all of it. Every moment of it.
A more difficult territory is Shandy.
Shandy, okay.
You remember the story with Shandy?
So according to her complaint, the fact that Netflix stopped it with Tyra Banks looking up, saying and then going to black makes it look like Tyra Banks couldn't be bothered to remember the sexual assault of a cast member on America's Next Top Model. And according to Tyra Banks' complaint, Netflix producers always knew that Shondi was going to talk about it from the perspective of a sexual assault, but didn't tell Tyra Banks that that was the first time Tyra Banks had learned that Shanti characterized it as the sexual assault was apparently like after this whole thing aired. So Tyra is upset about not being given the opportunity to respond to that.
You thought Tyra Banks was going to participate in a Netflix documentary about America's Next Top Model and not sue? And sue for what, you might ask? Well, defamation, of course. She filed documents today saying that Netflix only used 16 minutes of her over 3-hour interview with them and manipulated it to support a false and defamatory narrative. Now, for somebody who has produced, edited, and manipulated many shows, it's kind of confusing that she didn't understand that the same could have been done to her. The lawsuit accuses producers for constructing a false narrative about her, including that she knowingly allowed a contestant to be essayed on the show and used their trauma for ratings, but then act like she didn't remember when she was asked. Of course, the contestant we're talking about is Shandy, who did accuse America's Next Top Model's production team from failing to protect her from being essayed by a guest on the show. In the documentary, Tyra Banks said she remembered Shandy's storyline, but said it's difficult for her to talk about production because that's not her territory. In the lawsuit, Tyra says that she had no idea Shandy was going to be participating in the docu-series and that she would label what happened to her as SA. Tyra's lawsuit slams Netflix, saying that the implication is devastating and deliberate, that they made it look like Tyra Banks couldn't remember a woman being SA'd on her show. I'm curious to know what you guys think about the lawsuit, but I really have a feeling Netflix is definitely going to settle.
Tyra Banks should absolutely be suing Netflix for defamation, and she is. I'm tired of hearing people say she shouldn't be doing this. Let me explain. Of course, she appeared in Reality Check, America's Next Top Model, and it was dastardly. Girlfriend looked awful, no question. She's now claiming we only saw 16 minutes of what was a 3.5-hour interview where a major part was accountability. Accountability, you say? Definitely did not see any of that. So because she says they edited a false narrative, it showed her in a light that was defamatory. She's requesting a jury trial to determine the appropriate amount of monetary compensation. Now, Tyra's suing for how she was edited on a TV show. It's ironic, I get it. But I firmly, deeply, aggressively would love to see this go to trial. Put her on the stand. That woman has never given a boring answer in her life, and I refuse to believe a courtroom would change that. She would work so hard to be believed by that jury. Oof, I just know it would be top tier entertainment. And hey, play the full 3.5-hour interview in open court, on a screen, for a jury, but most importantly, me. I would be locked in. Now, in reality, I would be shocked if this actually went anywhere. Yes, it was a horrible look for Tyra, but she signed a contract, a Netflix contract. It almost certainly gives Netflix the right to edit that interview however they see fit. She has been around long enough to know. But please tell me you don't think Tyra in court would be a show? I kid you not, I would structure my entire day around it.
Good morning, y'all. Tyra Banks done sued Netflix. I declare her, and she said, look, y'all not gonna play on my smiles. Y'all go ahead and grab your tea and have a seat, honey. Tyra said, look, I sat down for a 3-hour interview, big baby, and they only put 16 minutes of that interview in the final cut. And they conveniently left out the parts where I was taking accountability for the things that I did. Y'all go ahead and grab it. Let's talk. So again, Tyra Banks is suing Netflix over her portrayal in the docuseries Reality Check Inside America's Next Top Model. Now, in this lawsuit, she claims that the series was deliberately edited to push a false and defamatory narrative about her. So in the lawsuit, she decrees and declares that she sat down for a 3.5-hour interview and only 16 minutes made it to the final cut, which those moments of accountability were stripped out of the docuseries entirely. She said that the clips were stripped of context and reassembled to support a false and defamatory narrative unrelated to what she actually expressed. Now, Tyra says the most damaging claim centers around a contestant, Shandy Sullivan, who alleged in the docuseries that she was sexually assaulted during filming in Italy, and that production framed it as a cheating scandal. Now, she says that the doc implied that she had no memory of the incident. However, she says that this is a complete false narrative and a fabrication. She's saying that the full footage will show her nodding and saying, "I do remember her story," but the producers carved out the nod that she made in the middle of the sequence and cut her response so viewers would only see what looked like ignorance. She also said that they made it seem like she never pushed back against the misconduct that happened on set. She claims that during one cycle, a crew member came to her directly about a cast member engaging in a pattern of inappropriate sexual conduct. She says she immediately escalated this situation to executives and the network, and the production was paused so the entire cast and crew could undergo sexual harassment training from an outside expert. She also spoke out on the Miss J situation, saying that the documentary implied that she never visited him after he had a stroke. However, Banks says that she had been living in Australia for 2.5 years, tried repeatedly to reach him, and a family member eventually texted back months later apologizing for the delayed response. She says that she and Miss J maintained contact for 3 years after calls, voice notes, photos, text messages, and the last exchange happened on Christmas of 2025, where she replied to his health update asking, "Can we speak this week?" But they never did. Weeks later, the documentary dropped. So Tyra is suing for a loss of business opportunities, lost income, and mental anguish, and she is requesting a jury trial. Child, I want to know what y'all think about this. I mean, you can file a lawsuit for anything. That doesn't mean you're going to win. Maybe she can prove it. Put it in the comments.
Tyra Banks is suing Netflix for the documentary that came out about America's Next Top Model earlier this year. Remember, everybody was like, she's a producer on this documentary, and I was like, no, she's not. That's a rumor. See, why would she sue them if she was a producer on the documentary? She's suing them for defamation, and she's very, very unhappy with how the public perceived her in this documentary. She says that it was an over 3-hour interview and they only used 16 minutes and made it manipulative and made her look bad. I mean, there were so many other elements in that documentary that were not her interview, like, I don't know, a girl being raped on her TV show, like, I don't know, firing her best friends from her show and then not going to visit Miss J after he has a health thing. I don't know, one of the contestants being essayed during a shoot and then her being like, I'm uncomfortable, and Tyra being like, you have to suck it up. I don't know, making everybody do blackface not once but twice. I don't know, crashing out on a girl in front of everybody and like verbally abusing her. Oh, I don't know, forcing a girl to get her tooth gap closed and then widening another girl's. Oh, I know. How about finding out that a girl's mother was shot and then making her pose in a like shooting styled photo session? Like, there was so much more than her interview that made her look bad, but that's just my opinion. What do you guys think about this?
Let's kiki about this Tyra Banks versus Netflix lawsuit over the Reality Check Inside America's Next Top Model docuseries. I spent my weekend reading all 65 pages of the complaint, so you don't have to. And I think people are talking about this case all wrong. Everybody's saying that Tyra is suing because she got a bad edit, and that's not really it. And actually, her strongest claims aren't even the defamation. Defamation is the main headline and make up 3 of the 5 claims she's suing for, but it's the breach of contract and false endorsement that actually raised my eyebrow. What Tyra is claiming is that Netflix and the producers violated the actual agreement she signed before participating in the documentary. According to the rights agreement Tyra says she signed before agreeing to participate, it allegedly said that her interview footage could not be edited in a way that created actionable defamation. So what does that mean? She's not saying you made me look bad. She's saying you specifically promised not to edit my footage into something defamatory, and then that's exactly what you did. Now look, these are just allegations. Tyra still has to prove all of this, and defamation, as we know, is a difficult and uphill battle for public figures and celebrities. But here's why I think it's more serious than people realize. The lawsuit alleges that producers cut out footage where Tyra said she remembered former contestant Shandy Sullivan. Instead, viewers saw a pause, and a dramatic cut to black that allegedly made it look like Tyra either forgot or didn't care about what happened. Tyra also claims producers rearranged footage to suggest she knew about or helped cover up an SA allegation when she says she had no knowledge of it being non-consensual. And here's the key. If the raw footage shows what Tyra says it shows, she says there's 3.5 hours of interview footage. They only showed 16 minutes. If it shows what she says it shows, this stops being a conversation about whether a documentary was shady and becomes a conversation about whether producers manipulated footage in a way they contractually agreed not to. But here's the claim that surprised me the most. It's not even the defamation claim. It's the album cover for the soundtrack. According to the lawsuit, Netflix released a separate soundtrack album and allegedly used Tyra's image prominently on the cover. Tyra claims the agreement specifically prohibited using her image for commercial tie-ins, endorsements, or merchandising without her permission. And if that's true, that becomes a much simpler argument. It's basically, did the contract allow this? Yes or no? So after reading Tyra's lawsuit against Netflix and the producers of the doc, my takeaway is this. The defamation claim may be the headline, but the breach of contract claim may be the real story, and the soundtrack album false endorsement claim might be the sleeper issue that nobody is talking about. And that, my talkers, is the news you're nosy about. Make sure you're following for updates.
Tyra Banks is suing Netflix for defamation, and here's everything we know so far. For those of you who don't know, a little bit ago Netflix released a docuseries titled Reality Check Inside America's Next Top Model, where the people behind the hit reality show like Tyra, Miss J. Alexander, Jay Manuel, and more were interviewed about everything that went on behind the scenes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. When the docuseries was first released, a lot of people were disappointed with Tyra especially and the way she addressed it, or for that matter, didn't address the hard-hitting topics of what went on the show and the harm caused to the former contestants. It really didn't paint her in a good light because it seemed like she was dodging all of the controversial points that everybody wanted to hear about. Well, fast forward to now, and Tyra Banks has now filed a lawsuit against Netflix, 89 Blocks Holdings, Everwonder Studio, Netflix Music, and co-directors Maura Laushi and Daniel Savan for false light, defamation by implication, breach of contract, and false endorsement. This is because Tyra's lawyers claim that Tyra actually gave a 3.5-hour interview that was only cut down to about 16 minutes. The lawsuit claims that the footage was, and I quote, reassembled to support a false and defamatory narrative unrelated to what she actually expressed. And that the accountability that Tyra took for some of the show's shortcoming, and I quote, ended up on the cutting room floor, aka it was removed from the edit. The lawsuit also states, and I quote, the false narrative the producers constructed through selective editing, deliberate omission, and surgical manipulation of continuous footage included that Tyra knowingly allowed a contestant, Shandy Sullivan of Cycle 2, to be SA'd on her show, exploited that contestant's trauma for ratings, and then could not even remember it when asked. And Tyra's legal team cites that this was a complete fabrication. Tyra's lawyers claim that there is unedited, full footage showing her nodding yes and saying, and I quote, I do remember her story. Tyra and her legal team are now requesting a jury trial to recommend an appropriate amount of punitive damages for the offense. Now, I truly don't know what to think. I'm usually like, you're innocent until proven guilty, but for me, release the full interview. If it was truly false, defamatory, and there's footage that did do all of these things and show Tyra in a better light, release it. Have Netflix release it. And if you like this video, make sure to follow me to stay up to date on everything pop culture.
Like I said, social media has been split. One side, Tyra Banks deserves the chance to defend herself, and the documentaries have responsibility to present interviews fairly and accurately. Others argue that the contestants from the America's Next Top Model have spent years claiming that they were edited or portrayed unfairly on television, and they see a lawsuit as a full circle moment. Some fans are pointing out that the reality TV editing has always been a part of the industry, and that audiences should understand that what they see on screen isn't always the complete story. Others believe the chase could have been broader, impacts the potential change on how documentaries and reality programs use the footage in the future. Meanwhile, long-term fans of the show have revisited classic episodes and debated whether America's Next Top Model was simply a product of its time or crossing ethical lines. Whether Tyra Banks wins or loses in court, this lawsuit has already reopened the conversation about reality TV, the documentary.